All right, I'm in the Gospel of John, chapter 17. I'm going to spend some time in verses 13 to 17. This is Jesus expressing prayer. He is talking to the living God. He's talking to God about his disciples. Jesus has spoken to his God about his desire, his interest that they be one with one another. And of course, the only way that this is going to take place is if they individually embrace the truth that he has revealed so that collectively they can be unified with one another, with each other, on the basis of the truth that they embrace, that they believe. So I was speaking about this in the previous message. In John chapter 17, he speaks about the truth and the fact that they are going to be set apart and that there will be some consequences related to them being set apart. Going back a little bit to verses 7 and 8, we have some details that will set them apart. In John chapter 17, verse 7, "Now they have known that all things which you have given me are from you." This is a way of saying that the disciples recognize that all things that Jesus has expressed to them are things that he received from his God. Right now, if they're going to believe that alone, if they just believe that alone, this is going to separate them from the other people who are around them who do not believe that Jesus is hearing from God. All right, for whatever reason, doesn't matter. But the disciples are going to be separated from everyone else around them who don't believe these things. And this is important to recognize. It's important for you to understand this because you also, because of what you believe, you will be separated from those who are around you also. In verse 8, "For I have given to them the words which you have given me, and they have received them, and have known surely that I came forth from you, and they have believed that you sent me." When you believe these fundamental truths, right, that God sent Jesus, that Jesus came forth from God, that he has revealed the truth that God wants us to see, wants us to understand, and wants us to believe, that by default, you're going to be separated, you're going to be distinct from other people who don't want to believe this. All right? This is what's going to happen. And so how are they going to relate to you? You know, obviously, they're not going to like you. Okay, and you might wonder, well, why? You know, what's the big deal? It's just because of what I believe. You know, well, it's not such a big deal if it's true. Okay, if it's true, then they're not going to like you because you are, in effect, in a sense, you are going to expose that they are liars, that they are dishonest, that they reject the truth, that they do not live in reality, that they are unwilling to embrace that which is real and true. And so you are going to condemn them just because you believe something that's true, and they know it's true. That's why it bothers them so much, because they know it's true. And, and that's a disruption, That's going to make them feel uncomfortable, and it's going to be your fault. And so instead of dealing with the truth, instead of dealing with reality, well, it's a lot easier, I suppose, to just go after you and cause harm to you, to hurt you, to attack you, to violate you. That's just how it tends to go. All right, I'll come back to this in a little bit. But that's kind of a summary of what we're going to be looking at. In verse 13, John chapter 17, verse 13, Jesus said, "But now I come to you." He's talking about going to the Father. "And these things I speak in the world, that they may have my joy fulfilled in themselves." All right, so yeah, there's a lot of negative stuff, but let's take a moment before we go back to that. And let's enjoy verse 13 for just a little bit at least, right? that his joy may be fulfilled in you. All right. Now, why would God be having some sense of joy, especially, of course, when there are all these people who do not want to believe in him, or anything like that? Where is he getting his joy from? Well, remember his objective. Okay, the primary objective of God is to have people in his life because they want to be in his life, and because they want to know who he really is, and because they want to live in reality, and because they want to live in the truth, that he wants to have people like that in his life. And the way that he acquires these people is he just simply presents the truth, and he calls out to everyone in the world in this way and says, here is the truth of himself, the truth of his existence, the truth of truth itself, and of course the truth of us. He presents some truth of some kind that gets exposed to the world, and there will be some people who will respond to that revelation. They will respond to the exposure of reality. There will be some people. Okay, now it turns out, if you haven't noticed, that most people do not respond well to this. Most people, they just do not like this. They don't want to have any part of this. This is just not what they want in their lives. For various reasons. And I spoke about this in previous messages. I gave the examples of the irresponsible kind of person and the responsible kind of person, just to kind of try to divide this up into two groups at least, where you have the irresponsible person who just simply lives by deception, manipulation, dishonesty, blackmail, extortion, whatever. And then you've got the responsible person who does this from a religious point of view, trying to become somebody that they're not in order to compare themselves with other people. So they have to suppress some of the truth that shows that they're not as perfect as they would like people to think they are, in order to compare themselves with other people, effectively step on them to elevate themselves, step on other people to elevate themselves. All right, and so there are various ways that people live in the denial of reality. But God speaks out to the people in the world, and he says, is there anybody out there who will acknowledge this reality, acknowledge this truth? Anybody want to know who the living God really is? And there will be some people who will respond in a way that he desires. And we don't know what the percentage of that is. I would guess it's less than 1%. From my personal experience of the people who I have had exposure to, I would say that the percentage is less than 1%. Maybe it's less than 100% or 1,000%, something like that. But it's definitely quite small. All right, but regardless of how small it is, just for the moment, I want you to think about the importance of the fact that there will be some people who will respond to that truth that God reveals in a positive way. And when they do, this is good. And this is something that pleases God. And he experiences a sense of joy when there is someone who effectively responds to his presentation of himself, who responds to the truth that he reveals, and they say, I want that to be a part of my life. I want that person to be a part of my life. I want my God to be a part of my life, in effect. And this brings God a tremendous amount of joy. Now, of course, there is a lot more to come, as the person believes more and acknowledges more and lives in more. There can very well be a continual increase in the joy of God. He really enjoys that. Consider the situation with Jesus. He's there at the end of his ministry. He's got a dozen disciples with him, almost a dozen, right? He's got about 11. And he's got these, he's got these few people who are in his life and who want to live in reality. And he has been surrounded, and he is surrounded by a lot of people who want nothing to do with him, many of which want to kill him, want to murder him. But at least he's got these few. And so it's more important for him to have some than none, and he will enjoy who he gets. All right? So what he would like us to experience is this joy with him, which I understand can be quite challenging. When we're overwhelmed by all the problems and complications and issues related to our lives and the people in our lives, as it seems like there's just a relentless struggle day by day, hour by hour, of conflict, of disruptions, of problems that are just thrown at us. War is upon us in various ways. And in the midst of all of this, it can be challenging to take a moment on occasion and just feel that sense of joy that we have this relationship with our God. But this is something that he really wants us to have. And he wants us to experience the joy that he has in us, and for us to embrace that also for ourselves, that there may be a fulfillment within our being, because we have a desire to have joy in our lives. We have a desire for that, and it's a good thing. And so that may be fulfilled if we will embrace the truth. There are many ways that we can embrace a lie or live in a fantasy and get some sense, some feeling of joy of some kind, but it's just not the same. It is not real. And I understand that some people would prefer that for various reasons, but you just have to let that go and move on and stay focused on yourself. And remember that this small amount of joy that is based on reality, and is based on the truth, and is based on your personal relationship with your God, that small amount is greater than any amount that the entire world could ever possibly embrace truly within themselves. Right? They may be able to pretend otherwise, but in comparison, it is nothing in comparison with what we can have in him. There are many things that can keep us from embracing the joy that our God has for us, that can keep us from enjoying the joy that that he experiences and that he has. For example, if I was to just ask you the question, does your God enjoy you? Does he really? Does he enjoy you? When he thinks of you, when he's around you, does he really experience a sense of joy? Many of us would really struggle with that. A lot of people who believe in God, who believe the gospel, there is a relentless struggle of this, because we could probably think of a lot of reasons as to why he is totally and absolutely disgusted with us, right? There's probably a few things that you are doing or that you have done recently, some sin in your life of some kind, that you just know God is absolutely disturbed, disgusted, and he is ashamed that you even exist in that sense. You may feel that on occasion. Or perhaps the devil or one of his angels might say that to you in that calm, pleasant, kind voice that you speak to yourself with on occasion. Sounds the same. Or you might even have some people in your life. You don't need some demonic spirit to tell you that. You probably have some people in your life who tells you that this is how God thinks of you, because obviously it's how they think of you, right? So there are these obstacles, and many of them can be true in the sense that, yeah, we sin. We violate the law. We violate our God. We violate others. We commit evil. This is a struggle. This is a challenge that we all deal with in life. But the reason why our God can still have joy in us in the midst of our sinfulness is because he really doesn't hold our sins against us. He doesn't hold our sins against us because he died for the sins of the world. All right? So he dealt with those sins. He died for those sins. He forgave those sins, past, present, future. Those sins have been resolved. They can, of course, still get in the way of our ability to function, our ability to relate to our God, our ability to be productive in the world that we're a part of. I mean, there are a lot of consequences that we'll never be able to get away from. But in terms of how our God relates to us, it is necessary for him to relate to us in the midst of our sinfulness. Otherwise, he'd never get anywhere. Remember that what's important is that we are growing and that we are changing, that we are becoming a different person than who we are right now. And that we are experiencing a relationship with our God that will work with us, that will change us and transform us as we mature and grow in our relationship with him, that this is just part of what it means to be a child of God and live in the new covenant. And in the midst of that, yes, there are going to be some challenges and there's going to be some struggles and we're going to make some bad decisions and we're going to engage in sin. There's plenty of that to go around, and it's going to go on until we are physically dead. There's no way around it. It's in the midst of that our God will enjoy those things that he can and that he does. And because he no longer holds our sins against us, he is able to relate to us in a loving way, in an accepting way, in a kind way. It doesn't mean that he lives in the denial of reality. I mean, if you were to ask him, Lord, did you notice that I did this? He probably would say, yeah, I noticed, but let's deal with what we can deal with right now. All right? There are still ways to proceed in life in the midst of these kinds of things, and it's necessary to do that. Otherwise, of course, you will get nowhere. All right? So it's not to say that it's okay or acceptable or to make an excuse. It's just to live in sober-minded reality. Not to live in denial. Our God does not live in denial of reality and just pretend that these things don't happen or don't exist. He continues to work with us in the midst of our sinfulness in whatever ways that he is able, and he will do that. And in that context, he can still enjoy us. All right? And so we will believe that he is so disgusted that there is no joy that he has towards us. Therefore, we are not receiving any joy from him. Therefore, we have no joy within ourselves. And so, obviously, this is going to be quite depressing. So our God, he really wants us to experience fulfillment in our being through trusting, believing, and experiencing the joy that he does have for us, even in the midst of those things that would justifiably get in the way, of why he would enjoy us at all. So in verse 13, but now I come to you, and these things I speak in the world, that they may have my joy fulfilled in themselves. All right, let me proceed into verse 14 to 17. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read verses 14 to 17, but I'm going to speak on these verses in reverse. I'm going to start with 17, go to 16, 15, and 14. In many passages in the scriptures, I find it much easier to work through them by doing this. And in this case, between verses 14 and 17, I think it's the best approach, or the better approach. So beginning in verse 14, Jesus said, he continues to say, I have given them your word, and the world has hated them because they are not of the world, just as I am not of the world. I do not pray that you should take them out of the world, but that you should keep them from the evil one. They are not of the world, just as I am not of the world. Some repetition there. Verse 17, sanctify them by your truth. Your word is truth. All right, let's focus on 17 and then work our way backwards. Sanctify them by your truth. Your word is truth. Now, what does that word sanctify really mean? What does that mean? If you ask most people in the Christian world, they will say that that word means that you are not sinning like you used to or like you normally would, or maybe at all. That sanctification is a word that means, to most people, it means that you stop sinning. Okay? And when you are fully sanctified, then of course you don't sin anymore. And that, for most people, is the objective of the Christian life. It is to get your flesh under control. It is to get you to stop engaging in sin. That's the purpose of the Christian life for most people, the pursuit and the accomplishment of sanctification. And they have all kinds of different ways and strategies and approaches and principles to live by in order to accomplish this primary objective in their lives. All right? And I will say that that is definitely not the primary objective. The objective of the Christian life is not to figure out how to stop sinning. The objective of the Christian life is to figure out and to grow in, to learn how to start trusting. All right? How to live in the love that God has for you. Look, I think it's fine to get rid of sin, but consider this. If you were to really examine yourself and you were to pick a sin, just pick one, it doesn't matter. Pick a sin. I am confident that if you really consider that sin that you have picked out, you probably are engaging in that sin because you're trying to experience fulfillment, all right? Fulfillment in the core of your being, in your heart, in your mind, in your soul, in your spirit, and in the base of who you are. You have a sense of emptiness, and you're trying to experience some sense of fulfillment in your being. And this could be described as maybe some love. Maybe you're after some love. Maybe you want some acceptance. Maybe you want some sense of meaning or purpose in your life. Maybe you want to feel safe. There are many feelings or desires that a person has. And this is what will motivate a person, encourage a person, drive a person. It will inspire a person to engage in some form of sin because there is the belief that they'll feel better, that they'll feel some sense of fulfillment through their pursuit of that. All right? But if you will rest in the love that God has for you, if you will rest in His acceptance, if you will live in His understanding, in His sense of meaning to life, in the purposes that He has, if you will live in Him in that context, well, then, the temptations to engage in sin are going to be substantially reduced. And so if you would like to see a reduction of sin in your life, deal with the issues that motivate us to commit sin to begin with. Instead of, just get your flesh under control. Just don't do it, 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 that kind of thing. And of course, that's not real. It just doesn't work. Or maybe you need to be threatened enough. Maybe you need to be punished enough. Or maybe we need to offer you enough blessings, enough rewards. Maybe it's just the incentives that we need to address. No, you need to address the reasons that drive a person to pursue sin. Okay? But that's what people think of when they think of the word sanctification, or to be sanctified. All right? And so to accomplish that, well, that's what church is, for. That's what religion is for most people in their lives. And if you haven't noticed yet, if you haven't been listening to me for a while, listen to me a little bit longer, and you'll notice that is just not what I do. I'm not about how do I get you to stop sinning. I'm not about that. I want you to know your God. That's what I want, all right? That's what I am. That's what I do. That's what I have been sent to do. That's what I believe my God wants me to be a part of. And so that's what I have devoted my life to doing. All right? And I think that that is good, even though I've encountered an abundance of people who believe that that is evil, but, well, what are you going to do? I'm going to do what I believe is right. And so, that's what I do. Now, when it comes to sanctification in the context of reducing or eliminating sin, again, you're not going to get anywhere with that. And hopefully a person will discover that sooner than later, but not to just come to the end of themselves and abandon the faith entirely, but to recognize that there's got to be something else. And this is the something else. It's a different definition. All right, there's a different definition for sanctification. The word just simply means to be set apart. That's all it means. It doesn't mean clean up your flesh. It means be set apart for a defined purpose. All right, that's what it means to be sanctified. And he's saying, sanctify them by the truth. Be set apart by the truth. He doesn't say be set apart by not sinning anymore. He says be set apart by believing the truth. Just believe the truth, And of course, there's a lot to say about what the truth is, but that's what he's speaking about. That there will be a separation. You will be set apart because you believe those things that God has proclaimed, that he has revealed, that he has defined. Being the creator of all things, you know what? His opinion and what he thinks and what he believes actually matters. It really does. And you should believe what he says. If there is a God and he speaks, believe what he says. All right? And when you do, you are definitely going to be set apart because, of course, the overwhelming majority of people refuse to believe that there's even a God. And if there is, well, we'll figure out our definition of who he's supposed to be, kind of thing. Instead of who is he really? So you will be set apart just because of that. And that's sanctification. That is being sanctified. That's verse 17. John chapter 17, verse 17. Sanctify them by your truth. Your word is truth. And his truth will definitely set you apart. Let's go back up to verse 16. They are not of the world, just as I am not of the world. All right, now why? How does this work out? Well, you see, there are so few people who will acknowledge the truth that God has revealed that it is as if the entire world rejects their creator. All right, so we just call it the world. So when you believe the truth, you're definitely going to be set apart. You're going to be sanctified in comparison with everybody else around you. So Jesus was definitely not of this world because he believed something different than the world. All right. Now, of course, the people in the world have varieties of beliefs, But what is it that they all have in common? Don't believe in Jesus. Okay? And most of what people believe, most of what they believe is based on anybody can believe anything they want just as long as you don't believe in Jesus. That's the world. Okay? That's the world. So, Jesus was definitely set apart. And if you believe in him, you're going to be set apart also. And so, in that way, he is not of this world. When you believe the truth, you will no longer be of this world. No longer. You will have been, everybody's born into this world, but when you embrace the truth of Jesus, you're out. You're out. You're not of this world anymore. That's what he's expressing. Let's go back up to verse 15. In verse 15, I do not pray that you should take them out of the world, but that you should keep them from the evil one. Now, there's a lot to say about this. This is going to be a little bit of a challenge. I may need to come back to this later. But he prays you do not take that the living God does not take us out of the world, but just that we're not of it. So we can be in the world, but not really of the world. All right. What he means is that obviously we're in the world. We're in the midst of all these people. We're in the midst of the planet, but we're not of it because we don't believe the truth. All right. That they say is the truth. I'm sorry. We are not of it because we believe the truth of God. We are not of it because we do not believe the truth that everybody else wants to think of and believe in. All right, that there are two different points of view. What they believe is the truth is not true. It's the lie. I almost misspoke there just a moment. All right, but what you've got is you've got the people in the world. We are not of it, but we are in it. Now, obviously, there is a lot of advantages to us still being in the world, but not of the world. There's a lot of advantages. There's a whole lot that can be said about that. But let's start with what he said, that we be protected from the evil one. Okay? Just to begin with that, what he's saying is that we do not want, and he does not want, us to have any interactions with the devil or the angels who decided to follow him, with any of the demonic powers. There is no positive result to having interactions with these beings, with these people, all right, with these persons. There is no positive thing that comes out of that. There is no redemption for them at all. So don't even try, okay? There's just no redemption for them. But there is redemption for the people in the world, of the world. There's redemption for them if they will surrender to the truth. And so we definitely need to avoid any interaction with the devil and his angels, with any of the evil ones, because there's no positive outcome that can occur through that. However, for us to still have access to the people who are in and of the world, for us to have access to them allows us to be participants in reaching out to them with the hope that perhaps one day they will surrender to the truth of God, at least to some extent, and that we may be able to participate in people believing the truth. So it is a good thing for us to be in the world, but not of it, just to be able to have access to those who are lost, and so that we can participate in some being saved, however many that may be, probably very few, but to at least be a participant in the work of God in that regard. There are also many ways through the sufferings and the difficulties and the struggles of life. There are many ways that our God can show us more about ourselves and about Him, and that we may be able to grow closer to Him through the struggles and challenges and difficulties that we experience and we encounter. All right? This is a very important part of our lives, and so don't take us out of here. I know that sometimes life can be really tough. It can be awful. It could be just horrific. I understand. I've experienced that many times. I expect a few more to come soon. I understand, that there are times when we just say, enough, just get me out of here kind of thing, right? But no, it's not. That's not what's more important. What's more important is how are you going to grow to know your God through the tribulations and struggles and the difficulties of life. I've got some serious enemies. I do. I've got people who you would think would definitely not be an enemy of my existence, you would think, well, that's crazy. But oh yes, who are just absolutely devoted to my destruction. They despise my very existence. And if I was to tell you a few of them, you would think, how could that be? But yeah, they absolutely despise my existence. And any chance they really get, they go after me, and they go after me hard, I mean, it's like their purpose in life for some reason seems to be just patiently waiting and then pouncing upon whatever opportunity presents itself that they can cause me harm, for their own benefit, however that may occur, or just for fun, or just because it makes them feel good. I mean, there just simply are people like that, and they just don't get it. They don't understand that I will survive. I will endure. I will win. They just don't get that. And I grow to know my God more and more, and my convictions get stronger and stronger every time they come after me. Because at the end of the tribulations, the end of the struggles, the conflicts, the difficulties, I grow closer to him. So now what, right? I mean, you hated me because I believed in Jesus and in my God before, and that's what motivated you to try to find some way to hurt me. And the end result, I'm closer to him. Good for you, I mean, all right, now I'm not saying this in order to invite, more of this, or to encourage this to happen more in people's lives, because there are other ways. It doesn't require that. But and I think I've had enough. Thank you very much. But this is what it means to be in the world, and these are the people who we're trying to reach out to. These are the people that that we would think that they would eventually surrender to the truth, that they may grow to know their God. But some may not. You just got to keep going and live your life regardless, and experience the joy that God has for each one of us. I mean, that's there. To me, there just is no other way to live. There really is no alternative. I can't just walk away or just not believe. That isn't going to happen. And so this is the struggle that we will have, and Jesus says, don't take people out of this. Don't take you out of this. Let's do it. Let's embrace it. Let's walk through the valley of death, together with our God. And then the next valley of death. And then, maybe go through it again. There is no end to this until we physically die. And there's no good thing about hurrying that about, because we will miss out on wonderful opportunities to grow to know our God more and more that we will not have when this life is over. So we definitely need to be protected from the evil one, but and not have anything to do with him or his representatives. But with regards to other people, that's a little bit different. There is something to be aware of, though, and that is that when the devil has trouble getting access to you, all right, when he has trouble getting access to you, he will go after the people who do have access to you. Think about that for just a moment. I'll say it for myself. All right, and that is that when the devil has trouble gaining access to me, because if I see him coming, we've had some encounters before already. So he knows that it's much better to go after the people who are close to me, who have access to me, because they're going to be easier targets than I am. And he can cause disruptions and disturbances in their minds, in their lives, in ways that they will be used as tools in order to cause disruptions and problems and harm to me. All right? And I've seen this happen multiple times. It's just it's a reality of life, and it's something that you should be aware of, in the sense that there are going to be people who are in your life, and if the devil has trouble causing problems and pain and suffering to you directly, the devil and his angels may go after those people who are closest to you, who have access to you, because the devil can get to you through them a lot easier than he can get at you directly. All right, and so Jesus may pray that our God may send angels to come and wage war and provide defenses and keep us protected from the evil one. But it's different when there are other people who can have access to us and cause harm to us because they have been inspired by the devil, not even knowing it, because they probably don't even believe that he exists. Or in some cases they do, and they want to have a partner in their lives, a demonic spirit who can participate in causing me harm or you harm, because they just enjoy the sense of accomplishment. All right. Or maybe the sense of revenge for something that doesn't even justify it anyway, or is just a figment of their imagination. There's a whole lot to say about that, but I will proceed. Let me go back up into verse 14. In verse 14, I have given them your word, and the world has hated them because they are not of the world, just as I am not of the world. All right? Now, why do the people hate Jesus? Let's start with him. Okay, you've got two different groups of people in general. I've talked about this in the previous messages. You've got the irresponsible kind of a person, and you've got the responsible kind of a person. Let's try to describe the people during the time of Jesus that he was relating to in that sense. Okay, you may find the irresponsible kind of a person to just simply be the non-religious. And believe it or not, there were a lot of people in the land where Jesus was preaching and teaching and living who rejected God. There were a lot of people, and they would just hate Jesus because he's exposing the truth that they reject their God. Now, we don't have any real descriptions of anybody really going after him in a profound way just because of that. In most cases, his conflicts were with people who did believe in God, that they would fit into the responsible category, or that they were trying to be religious. They were trying to be holy. They were trying to live a holy life. They were trying to avoid sin, and he had a problem with them. They hated him. So you've got the irresponsible, or you've got the people who just simply reject the existence of God entirely. For them to hate Jesus, that's easy to understand, right? You probably have lots of people in your life who totally reject the existence of God, and they hate you. They hate you, they despise you, they reject you, they are disgusted with your very existence. All right, why? Because you expose the truth of them being evil. Just because you exist. You don't even have to say anything. They just know that you believe in God. Oh, there's some condemnation coming, just because of that. Because you don't go along with the lies, with the deceptions, with the, with the denial of reality that they just really want to live in. All right, so those people are easy. It's easy to understand why they would hate you. Why would religious people hate you? Why would religious people hate Jesus? Well, because he exposed the truth that they were not as good as they proclaimed or as they pretended to be. He exposed that. He said, you're not as holy as you think you are. You're not as sinless as you think you are, or as you want people to believe you are. He exposed that. And it's necessary for a person to be confronted with that if they're ever going to come to the point of embracing and surrendering to the grace and mercy of God. You cannot receive the grace and mercy and forgiveness of God unless you need his grace, mercy, and forgiveness. But if you figured out how to live your life by yourself out of the energy of your flesh in order to never sin, or at least you sin a lot less than everybody else does. If that is what you believe defines what is necessary in order to be right with God, well, he doesn't feel that way. God doesn't feel that way. All right? And so the religious person hated Jesus because Jesus exposed the truth that they really did need the grace, mercy, and forgiveness of God. So you also will be hated by the religious people because you will enjoy the grace, the mercy, the forgiveness, and the love of God, the acceptance of God when they can't, they won't. All right? But you will. And if you are at peace in your heart, if you have joy in your heart, all right, they're going to go after you. They're going to hate you. They're not going to like you. Especially if you don't, obey like they do. Right? Or maybe you got some sin in your life that they don't struggle with. All right? They're going to hate you. There are a lot of people who will go to church. They will decide to be a Christian because they want people to like them. I want friends. I want people to like me. So I'm going to be like this. I'm going to believe this. It doesn't matter if you really do or not. You'll just pretend you do. And there are a lot of people who can get along that way, and you can make friends that way. And there are people who will be friends with you even though they know that you're just kind of going along. They probably are also. And they're just wanting to have friends too. There can be unity with people who believe things that are the same, even though it's not true, even though God doesn't believe that. He doesn't think that. That's not what that's not what he lives by. It's not his reality. But it's theirs. And so, people can make friends and they can find people who will like them. And I don't want to discourage that, all right? It can be a good thing to have friends and have people like you. That's fine. But, eventually there will likely be a separation as you, or maybe they pursue the truth and you don't, all right? There will likely come a point when you're going to encounter some people who are just going to turn against you. They're going to hate you. They're going to despise you. You're going to offend them just by your existence. Just because of what you believe, whether you tell them that you believe those things more than once or not even. All right? And so please prepare yourself. Prepare yourself that if you decide that you want to live in the truth of God, you need to know that you're going to be hated just because of that. And it's wrong for people to hate other people just because they believe something that's different. I don't hate people who believe something that's contrary to what I believe. They want to believe that, they go right ahead. When I say that, it offends them even more because they won't say that to me. I'm free to do that, but they are not free. No, no, they are not. All right. So, what you believe will separate you, and you will find that you will be hated by a lot of people. Now, if you don't talk about it a whole lot, if you don't let people know a whole lot, if you give them some sense of doubt in the sense that maybe you don't have these convictions so much as you suggested you did, maybe they'll like you, But for somebody like me, when my whole life is devoted to proclaiming what I believe is the truth with deep conviction, it's hard to find anybody who likes me. It just is. It's just difficult. But, I have suffered so much in my life. And I suffered a whole lot before I came to know the Lord and before I surrendered to the gospel, that it was easy for me to accept that, okay, people are going to hate me. Well, so what? They hate me now already anyway. Folks, I did not come out of out of the womb and into the world praising Jesus. I didn't do that. And I've got a long, glorious history of evil before I came to know the Lord. I did not come to know the Lord until after I was an adult and after I spent plenty of time committing sin. And I had a lot of people who absolutely hated me for good reasons. Absolutely. You hate me, Sure. All right? And I decided that, you know what? I'm going to become someone different. I'm just determined I will not be like that anymore. And boy, that offended these people even more. They hated me even more. Why? Because they wanted me to be evil. Why? So that they can say that, they can compare themselves with me. It was a form of religion. So, I need to be able to say that you're a horrible person, so it makes me look better. So it makes me look like a good person. And if you become a good person and I don't improve, well, then, this just isn't going to work. All right? Okay, fine. So I didn't care. Everybody hated me already. So if I'm going to embrace the gospel, if I'm going to believe in my God, if I'm going to grow to know him, they're going to hate me still? What's the difference? What's the difference? I didn't have any friends before. If I don't get any friends now, so what? So, that's how I got started. And I've kind of lived most of my life since then kind of like that in various ways. And I can still, even today, I could walk away from everybody and everything if that is what it takes in order to hold on to what I know is true. So be it. Regardless of what I lose, the truth is more important than anything. For me to be the person whom my God wants me to be is more important than being who I once was or anybody else or whatever. There just is nothing. There's nothing in existence that is more valuable to me than my personal relationship with my God. All right? And so regardless of who hates me or why, that will absolutely have no relevance to my existence ever. Okay? That's how I feel about it. If you don't feel that way about it right now, don't feel guilty. Don't feel bad. Don't feel awkward. Just say, okay, Aaron, good for you. And maybe one day I'll feel the same way. And if you don't, don't feel bad about it. It's not that important. What's important is that you continue to grow in the faith. So let me go back to verse 14 again. I have given them your word, and the world has hated them because they are not of the world, just as I am not of the world. I do not pray that you should take them out of the world, but that you should keep them from the evil one. They are not of the world, just as I am not of the world. Sanctify them by your truth. Your word is truth. So with all that I have just said, read through these verses 14 to 17 with that understanding of what I've just described. Or watch this video again and read through it again so that you can get a good picture of what I believe Jesus is expressing in this prayer and what it implies. Okay, for those of you who are using this for your small groups, I've got a question for you that would probably be a good question to inspire some discussion. What are some of your experiences in being rejected for your beliefs? What are some of your experiences that you have had that you changed your beliefs? You once believed things that were not true. You then believed some things that were true. And what happened with some of the relationships that you had with other people in the sense that they rejected you? What were some of your experiences related to that just because of what you believed? All right? As an example, or other circumstances. I think it's a good question in order to facilitate some conversation and some discussion. Okay, I will proceed into verse 18 in the next message. Thanks.